bodily function to keep our eyes moist and free of debris. It's also an involuntary action. None of us chooses when to blink. Our bodies just ensure that we do, time and time again, like clockwork. It's not something that anyone typically questions. But actually, thanks to some of the most bizarre arms of modern theoretical science, there could also be an all-new world every single time our eyes close. And more specifically, quantum superposition. This is a fundamental property of particles in the quantum realm. It describes how they can occupy multiple locations, energy levels, spin directions, multiple states simultaneously, and is in contrast to a classical understanding of reality, where objects can only ever be in one state at a time. For example, a coin. Classically, it can be either heads or tails, but at the quantum level, it can be both heads and tails at once. Its quantum state is a superposition of both possibilities. And ultimately, it's the same principle for every other possible thing you could imagine. From here, we can apply the many worlds interpretation, a famous theory as to how the world really works. It takes things even further by suggesting that every possible outcome of any event ever, including any quantum event, actually does occur, but in separate branching universes. It says that every choice you make and every event that unfolds should spawn new worlds where the consequences of that moment are played out. It's easy to picture if, say, you're at a fork in a literal road and you take either the left or right turn. But really, this kind of split is happening all the time, all around us, and perhaps thousands of times a second if we boil it all the way down to the quantum level. Which brings us back to blinking. Because although one blink requires comfortably less than 1 second to complete, it's an action that's actually significantly more dramatic than all of the countless subatomic firings that are endlessly happening at the same time. In this way, then, theoretically speaking, it seemingly fits that every time you blink, you at least create parallel universes, as per the many worlds interpretation. That phrase, theoretically speaking, is important though. At present, there's still no clear evidence to confirm that blinking is connected with making or transitioning between these hypothetical planes. It's just that if you accept the many worlds interpretation as true throughout the universe, then it's apparently inevitable. Every time we blink, a new arm of the multiverse is made, just as it is every time you smile, frown, click your fingers, or scratch your nose. Ultimately, though, there is another way of approaching the question and perhaps another avenue down which blink universes do happen. We need to also consider the observer effect and wave function collapse. According again to quantum mechanics, the act of observing something at the quantum level is what forces it to be whatever it's seen as. This, in short, is the wave function collapse. It's when the quantum entity is forced to choose just one state from its superposition of possibilities. In the previous coin example, if we observe the coin, it will either be heads or tails. The act of observation has caused it to essentially choose one or the other. From the point of view of blinking, here's where it could again get pretty interesting. Clearly, when we blink, our eyelids cover our eyes for a brief moment and we do not see what's in front of us. Might it be then that this momentary darkness also creates an environment where the observer effect is paused and quantum superposition occurs again? While as before this isn't a proven concept, it arguably does make sense within the current understanding of quantum phenomena. It also triggers further questions about the true nature of consciousness and conscious reality. When we blink, our external environment is effectively removed from our conscious experience for the duration of that blink. From moment to moment, it appears inconsequential. And in the meantime, where are we, our conscious selves, during our blink time? From a slightly more grounded, less immediately far-fetched position, cosmology and neuroscience offer up some further thoughts. While we often say that something happens in the blink of an eye, it's not always the case that whatever that something was really did just take a fifth of a second to complete. However, scale up to the universe level, and it becomes clear that ultimately every blink contains infinite possibilities. Perhaps during your last blink, it was precisely then that some far-off star was born out of cosmic dust. Or maybe during your next blink, the orbit of a distant moon will deviate just enough to ensure that it will finally drift away from its host planet. More generally, and applying the universal constant of the speed of light in a vacuum, we can say that during every blink, light travels 37,200 miles, i.e. 1/5 of light speed's 186,000 miles per second. which is the equivalent of traveling 1.5 times around the Earth. Even without parallel worlds then, it's clear that there is a lot happening every time our eyes briefly shut. From the perspective of neuroscience, it's previously been suggested that blinking could indeed offer more than simply being a function to wet our eyes. It can also be viewed as providing something like a tiny nap for the brain, a process that requires around a 20th of our time all the time. It's something that, to some degree, gives our mental gears a millisecond break, helping to reset attention and perhaps maintain efficiency. In this way, most neuroscientists likely wouldn't conclude that every blink is a portal to a parallel universe. Rather, it's simply a function to transport us into darkness momentarily, which our brains can then cleverly edit out to provide us with the general feeling that we have continuous vision. When you combine that with the realization of all that we missed during a blink, it's quite a trick that the brain is pulling. But still, the fact remains that for that 1/20th of our time, for those 2.5 years of our lifetimes, we are inescapably prevented from seeing what's supposedly right in front of us. And as well as that, if the many worlds interpretation holds true, then we're also spawning all new branches to a quantum multiverse. With every blink, new worlds are made. And perhaps we ourselves are briefly pulled out of our cosmic position. So what do you think? Have you ever thought about blinking quite so much? And are you now maddeningly aware of all the blinks you're blinking right now? As our understanding of the quantum world expands, we may one day find out if there truly is a portal to infinite possibilities within such a basic biological function. As our knowledge of the human brain improves, we might soon discover that blinking is only a physical necessity. As our appreciation of human consciousness evolves, there might be some kind of middle ground between the two. For now, the idea that we could blink into a different universe is hypothetical, theoretical, speculative. It is by no means proven. And yet, with this most simple of acts,